Tina, are you happy enough that I make you co-host just as a just in case?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Right, this is us live now, so it should, even me just speaking here, it should
Okay,
in 10 or 15 seconds at least pick me up on YouTube. So
okay.
hopefully that should be us. I'll let you know.
All right, thank you.
You want to try just speaking there a bit, and then I'll just make sure it comes through here on YouTube. All right.
Testing, testing, 1, 2, 1, 2, testing.
joining online tonight. Hopefully this will help our meeting run smoothly till we get other issues sorted out. Just at this stage, ask everyone online to please make sure their microphone is muted, because we are hearing a wee bit of feedback in the room here, and keep it muted at all times unless you're invited to speak to myself. Also, just for ease of use here for member service, if I can ask everyone just to put their camera on, just so we can try and gauge who's wanting to speak and which time they're coming in. We have a couple here to help keep an eye on things, so hopefully this will work smooth. So thank you for joining. I'll just ask ICT if we can now please confirm that we've begun live streaming. Okay, good evening members and welcome to our meeting tonight. Thank you all for joining, and we're just going to now go to our agenda item 1, our apologies. I've received one from Councillor Armagh, who hopes to join the meeting shortly. Is there any other? Councillor Flaherty?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have an apology from Councillor Kyle Savage. He's on Deputy Lord Mayor duties tonight and just can't make it at all.
Councillor Flaherty? No other hands up, so we'll move
Recording
on
in progress.
Okay, members, we're going to go to agenda item 2 and declarations of interest. If members are happy, I think we'll take them the normal way, just as we go through the meeting, unless anybody has any particular one they want to give us now. No, okay. Members, tonight we have a presentation from Owen McGuinness, and we're looking forward to hearing him here. Owen has been on the meeting before, and from Ulster University Economic Policy Centre. So I'm going to ask Paula is going to share his slides for him, and when Owen, if you can come in now, we'll look forward to your presentation.
Thanks very much, Chair. You can hear me okay clearly? Yep, it's good. So I'm just going to run through the slides. Paula has them there for you. So I'll keep an eye on the time here, and sort of maybe speak for 10 minutes tops really on this. So maybe next slide, Paula. So basically, the overview at the moment for the Northern Ireland economy more generally is one that, against all the expectations over the last year, so we've actually seen quite good local growth really within the local economy in most of the broad sectors, services in particular, manufacturing and probably a bit less. So we're forecasting that growth will continue this year and into next year, and in fact be a little stronger next year than this. Much of the growth is really underpinned by continued strong employment growth. I'll come on to that a bit more in the next slide, but it's particularly, we've seen that in the 3 sectors in particular: health, transport and construction. Construction in particular has been very strong over the last year, though we are kind of seeing now issues which have been there now catching up us in terms of the pipeline for new developments. This has been an issue for a long time, and it now seems to be particularly pinching new starts for construction. So we could see that those numbers become a bit softer over the next while. So that's good employment growth in general, and again we're expecting to see that to continue this year quite strongly, and then slow next year. And much of that it really means, and this would mean at the local level within the council area as well as across the north, that unemployment is going to remain at historic lows. We've never really seen unemployment at 2% before, but we're expecting that to continue over the next while. There are, just on the other side of that, there are downside risks there. I mentioned there interest rates and inflation, and will continue to take up headlines there, but there's also other risks in terms of global trade changes, potential tariffs coming out of the US, and global worries around investment more generally, and in terms of the interest rates effects on that. We're seeing locally, just in the most recent budget there, the growing pressure now to increase tax takes, given the expenditure there's been in recent years for the cost of living crisis, and prior to that with the pandemic. So just on the next slide, Paula. So these charts are really indicate just how strong employment growth has been. You can see on the left hand one the kind of hollow or dipped out valley there that was in around the pandemic period, but you can see there almost within sort of a period there of 18 months, employment growth had begun to pick up again and has continued very strongly over the last while. We're seeing that just in the last couple of quarters there's been a sort of softening of that growth, which still means there's new jobs being added on, but not at the rate they were, say, a year ago. So perhaps just the next slide on. And we're expecting that outlook will continue to be positive. In fact, I mentioned there a moment ago about unemployment being at historic lows. We could look to see over the next 10 years hitting 75% of those who are aged between 16 and 64 being in employment. And in a sense, that is the thing that kind of sets the scene for most of the economy at the moment, is the tightness of the labour market, the difficulty of recruitment, challenges around retaining staff as well. So I think we're, on the continued reliance we will have, I think, not only on sort of school leavers and graduate entry, but also on migration as well, to sort of feed that labour market demand. So turning to more local issues, maybe just pop on 2 slides. And just like the Northern Ireland picture, it's almost a repeat of that. You can see there again where we've seen steady employment growth for more than a decade within ABC, and we're at a high here now of almost 100,000 employee jobs in the borough. So it's quite remarkable. Steady growth. Is very, very rare you would see a picture of employment growth like that, albeit we have that pandemic dip, but nonetheless it's been a fairly remarkable picture, I have to say, over the last while, and certainly not something we would have seen in the previous 50-60 years. So we're again slowing slightly the rate, but the council area remains stronger, in fact, than most other kind of council areas within the north in terms of the employment growth. So it's a good picture there for employment, and where we're seeing the growth, and we're likely to see it, you can see on the next slide if you want to move on one slide. We're expecting between 5,800 and 7,500 or so jobs to come in the period really, up to 2033, so over roughly sort of the next decade. And we're anticipating that across almost every sector. You can see under the baseline there that retail will come under pressure, we expect, but all other sectors we expect pretty much add-on jobs. And with the main sectors being, and the key sectors for that being health, manufacturing and construction, driving that. We're expecting to see a kind of strong, one of the things maybe to look out for there that we haven't seen to date in the council area to the same extent has been good growth in professional services jobs. So the council, could do with that diversification, I think, in terms of not only kind of growth in manufacturing, construction, but across the different sectors. So we're sort of seeing that now in tradable services, and we expect to see that to continue. Under the upper scenario, there'll be more than 1,000 new jobs added on in those kind of professional services. So maybe next slide, Paula. In line with that, the GVA, the gross value added, we again expect to see that continue, and you can see that that's been a bit more up and down over the last, when you look back over the last period since the 2001. There's been obviously that the crash set things back quite significantly, and then you can see it again with COVID there, that sort of short V dip really in GVA. But again, we expect to see that continue growing. So good growth there, and in fact, it'll be just ahead of the Northern Ireland average in terms of growth over the next decade. So the good news there, I think, around GVA. One thing, and the next slide highlights this, is there is a challenge in the council area. This has been a challenge for quite some time and remains so, and that is one, given it's one of the ministerial priorities, it's a particular one that ABC faces, not uniquely for councils, but the dotted line would show what the Northern Ireland average GVA per hour and GVA per job filled would be, and ABC would be below that. So, and the Northern Ireland average in terms of productivity is not brilliant. So we're sort of seeing that that's something certainly there of a challenge and a continuing challenge. And I think when we think about productivity, the key thing to understand by that is if we have good productivity growth and strong productivity growth, you begin to see that in things like pay levels, but also in terms of the quality of the jobs on offer. Both those things start to improve and tip upwards in the local workplaces. So I think that is a key challenge that is understood, but probably needs to be kind of addressed with some of the interventions that are coming on stream. And just the last slide then around some of the key discussion points and issues. I mentioned there just, and I would highlight that again, the tightness of the labour markets. And given that we're forecasting, a continuing economic growth and employment growth, that will kind of press on the need to kind of see, are there hidden reserves of labour there in terms of inactivity, economic inactivity rates, and what we could do in terms of kind of supporting those to get people to get back into work. That's going to, I think, require a number of initiatives. You're beginning to see that with the labour market partnerships addressing that over the last number of years. But I think it's going to probably need an all of Northern Ireland with local interventions being well supported. And I think, like I say, there are other ministerial vision areas like productivity and numbers of good jobs. They'll require a mind shift, I think, by all partners, government, business, as well as kind of other stakeholders locally. In terms then of where ABC goes in terms of the kind of key discussion points, there are probably three there. The first one I think is that the tightness in the labour market, is going to, I'd say, accelerate and become even stronger, I think, within the local economy, largely because I think employment growth is going to be stronger in ABC than elsewhere. Now, some of that could mean and will mean pulling in of commuters from other parts of Northern Ireland, but it also means, again, some of the issues around tackling inactivity. There will be opportunities there, I think, and that probably leads me on to that issue around productivity and performance. If productivity is better, if there are more adding on new jobs, better jobs, there will be opportunities then in terms of replacement of people in sort of bringing people on in lower skills and so on and so forth there, that I think could then tackle some of the inactivity issues. There is also another issue there, I think, within ABC, which is probably tied to the productivity one, and that is the need to foster greater levels of entrepreneurship. Council is very good and very strong in terms of self-employment numbers, but not a little or not enough of that is actually then leading to further employment, self-employment +1, +2, +3. So it's that kind of challenge that's there. Again, not unique to the council area, but nonetheless one that's there. And I suppose in all of this, you're then looking to see what are the opportunities that can be picked up out of things like the new local economic partnerships, the city deal, what's there in terms of the Southwest growth deal, but also I think the investments that are coming under the Belfast City Region deal, though not in the council area, will present opportunities for the council area, and the location of the council on the Belfast-Dublin economic corridor, I think, again presents another set of opportunities. So I think there are opportunities here in terms of tackling some of those productivity and activity and other issues there. So I'll leave it at that, and happy to take any questions either on the general overview or anything else that people have as questions for me.
Thank you, Owen. That was a great report, great to hear it, and thank you for the work that's gone into it. It is always good for us to sit and be able to look at this report and actually see our strengths and areas for improvement. And I noticed you mentioned about recruitment. I think that is a major issue in a lot of areas. But one thing I just want to ask you about before we open for questions, you said about our overall GVA and the growth in that, which was good, but the challenge that remains with productivity and jobs filled hours. I was just wondering, you had mentioned about some interventions. This was a key challenge on the intervention. What are those interventions that you're referencing? That just in a brief, if you could give us that, it would be interesting. Thank you.
I think, I mean, when you look at the Southwest growth deal, there are a number of interventions there, I think, in terms of advanced manufacturing centres. And I mentioned although ABC is obviously not in the Belfast City Region growth deal, there are going to be opportunities there for companies from ABC to be able to kind of tap into some of those innovation centres that are springing up, I think, as part of that growth deal. You'll see it also, I think, in terms of some of the proposed investments under the Southwest deal there. Also, I think there's also there's certainly some things there that can be done which will increase productivity within existing businesses, tourism businesses, I'm thinking in particular. some of the proposed investment around some of the tourism initiatives under the growth deal, I think could be significant in that space too. So I suppose the point I'd make there is that there are kind of growth deal interventions. There are also probably one other area I would highlight is some of the kind of skills development opportunities that are there, both within the FE College SRC, but also I think some of the other kind of skills interventions and academies that are planned by the LMP, because I think that's going to be a critical point in terms of upskilling staff. If there are to be kind of openings for new staff, other staff as they're upskilled will allow those to be created.
Okay, yeah, thank you. It's just interesting to hear, and good to hear even the opportunity there with existing staff and stuff as well in the tourism thing. So, Councillor Lowry, you have your hand up there if you can come in.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Owen. Very strong presentation. It does bode well, you know, in terms of that growth. I'd say a lot of other areas would be envious of some of those figures, Owen. Just a quick question. You touched on professional services being potentially a newer growth area for the borough, rather than maybe a couple of traditional options. Is that sort of local companies expanding, do you think, or is maybe companies moving into the area, or existing companies diversifying their portfolio? Just if they've a bit of information around that on. Thank you, Chair.
I think, Councillor Lavery, it'll be a mix of the two. I mean, I think what we've seen elsewhere is expansion in some local professional services companies that'll be there, and I'm thinking here accountancy, legal services, that sort of space. When you kind of think of professional services, that's the type of area you're looking at. So to see some expansion there, and we've seen that, or companies that are in insurance or those sorts of offerings. I think also one of the interesting things will be to see now is what opportunities there may be there. And we're expecting to see these spread as the pressure comes on Invest NI to actually push some of the investment outside of Belfast in terms of new investment. So not only investment in existing Invest NI clients, but looking at new inward investment or other investment that could come into the area. And I think ABC's well placed for that. I mean, one of the things that strikes me about when we've done work in this in the past, that a large number of the commuting people, professionals leaving the council area to get onto the motorway in the morning are in those sorts of occupations. So they're leaving, they're leaving the council area and various parts of the council area to largely go into Belfast. So a spread of that type of professional services out of Belfast would, I think, be a kind of a key driver of that growth. And I think ABC and Derry, we would suspect, are the two council areas that are best placed to kind of capitalise on that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Albier, happy with that? Councillor McLeod?
Yes, Chair, thank you for letting me in, and thank you, Owen, for what was a very interesting presentation. I suppose my question would be around the upper and the baseline scenario in terms of the next 10 years and the projected net increase, overall 5,800 jobs, which is fantastic, and so on. Just to maybe drill down a little bit more into that, the sector that's coming at the top of your list, agriculture, I'm not necessarily querying the figures, but I would just like a little bit more from you, maybe, in terms of why you think that, I suppose in my terms, is quite on the poor side, so given the importance of the sort of agri-food sector to the ABC region. So just some thoughts around that, Owen, would be very good. Thank you.
No problem, Councillor McCann. I think one of the things I distinguish, and I think we'd find most of the agri-food, the production side of it, we would expect to see that in manufacturing. So, if you're kind of so we divide really agriculture into inside the farm gate and outside the farm gate, and outside the farm gate tends to be in two sectors, one being manufacturing in particular, but you also find it in transport. Those would be the two that we would see it in. Now, if you kind of take it inside the farm gate, we haven't seen much in additional growth in terms of employment inside the farm gate. We've seen plenty, as is the nature of the sector, we've seen plenty of replacement demand over over a period where if somebody kind of comes, somebody retires, somebody else comes into the place, somebody else takes on the farm, that's kind of seen as replacement as opposed to additional employment. So I think that's what we would see. We wouldn't be expecting much in terms of further expansion inside the farm gate, but a hell of a lot of expansion in terms of in the manufacturing space for agri-food. My sense is that agri-food as a portion of manufacturing within the council area is still a very strong, very strongly placed there. It's probably anything up to a third of manufacturing jobs are actually in, associated food production, everything from bakeries through to meat production, dairy production, that type of thing. So we would believe that that's going to continue to grow. That's been a growth area for Northern Ireland, but it's particularly been a growth area in ABC, Newrymore and Down, and Mid-Ulster probably are the three where we've seen most growth in that allied agri-food section or sector.
Okay, thank you, Owen. Sure, just maybe with your indulgence, could I have maybe a supplementary for Owen? And Owen, you'll be aware of some of the proposed changes around IHT in the budget recently, and I suppose the absolute sort of huge potential that has on those family farm producing businesses across the borough. I suppose that came maybe too late for the presentation that you've given this evening, but just a couple of sentences on that, please, Mike, would be very helpful. Thanks, Owen.
Happy to. I mean, and I'll give a kind of shout out there to one of the council officers, Nicola Wilson, for pointing out to me to sort of have a think about what I might say on it. I think. I'll preface it by saying, Councillor McLean, before I get on to with the kind of agricultural property relief, in general, I'm not an enormous fan, I have to say, of reliefs of any, in terms of tax, in terms of any kind. I think very often they probably start out with the best of intentions, but they last much longer than they were ever intended to. It's very hard to get rid of them once you bring them in. And I think this is the case, to a lesser degree, probably it's been made out, but is a case with most tax reliefs, is that people for whom they weren't intended sometimes get in the act in terms of tax planning. And I think that is the case in terms of, people investing in land we're not farming it in, let's be honest, but are there as a kind of tax relief against their own inheritance tax. So, but leaving that aside, and leaving those 2 points aside, I think it was a poorly thought out change, I think, by Treasury, and I think any kind of understanding of what land values are, we're not just talking in Northern Ireland, although it seems to me to be particularly an issue in Northern Ireland. There'd be the case, I think, in parts of the Midlands and other parts of even Northern England, I think, as well as Scotland. So it's an issue there that there's going to be a huge number of farm families potentially pulled into this, that I don't think, to be fair to the Labour government, that was ever intended. I think it was a total misunderstanding of what was going on. Now, if there were ways of kind of closing down some of the loopholes that is allowing others to kind of invest in land, which I'm not sure is doing anything except propping up, or indeed maybe even pushing up land values rather than propping up agricultural land values, and not helping farm families either. I think that would be a good thing, but I don't think that's the same as the change that is proposed. So I think it's a bad idea. I think it's been poorly thought out, and I'd be very surprised if it gets to April 2026 in anything like the shape it's being proposed to be.
Okay, thank you, Owen. And Councillor McElrath, your hand up there.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Owen, for your presentation. Listen, in my DEA, Owen, over this last couple of weeks and months, a number of our local restaurants have had to close down, and most of them have cited the difficulty in recruitment of staff in the hospitality business. And I was just wondering what your thoughts were across the board in terms of what you would be picking up in other areas. Is this something that's kind of unique to ABC, or are you finding across the province this is similar? It's a wee bit of a concern, obviously, for us locally, and it's something even some of the businesses that are still up and running are struggling with, and the impact that it then does have across the economy in ABC. And I was just wondering what your thoughts were on that aspect of the economic side of ABC going forward.
I think it is a challenge there, Councillor McElrath, for sure. Now, it's not your questions poses the right one. It's not unique to ABC by any manner of means. If you talk to anyone in the hospitality sector across the island, it isn't just across Northern Ireland, but coming back to Northern Ireland, it's a particular issue. Some of it, I think, is a kind of a hangover from the pandemic period, for sure. And I think many core staff and kind of the spine of a lot of hospitality businesses came out of the sector at that time, and many of those people have not returned to it if they've moved to other sectors. It isn't that people have gone out of work; they've just moved to other jobs and haven't gone back into the sector, and that has meant a lot of core staff. And I'm not just talking chefs; I'm talking right across kind of house management, all of that type of thing has been eroded out of the sector, because of the closures at that time. So that has been an issue, and the sector has struggled really to get back on their feet or get other people in. We're also, I think, one of the things I think COVID did highlight it, and it's a general issue there, is it's a hard sector to work in. It's not necessarily, in some ways it's a good sector for flexible hours, but in other ways, if it's a full-time as a full-time career, it's a hard sector to make a good living in. And I think that's an issue for it's an issue for the businesses, but it's also an issue more generally. And we're seeing that. I think one of the things I looked at this last year and into this year, we're seeing that in falling numbers in terms of people going through the likes of catering colleges and on other elements of kind of hospitality training. So that's an issue for us too. I think in terms of a pipeline of bringing FE and HE students through, and the absence of that. It isn't, as I say, unique to ABC. Where I am based in Newry and Down, it's an issue there as well. I think though the issue tends to be more sharp in council areas and in locations where there hasn't always been a very highlighted hospitality sector, if you know what I mean. So there isn't that many replacement people out there who are happy enough to move, because you often need that as a kind of it's such a churn of staff. You need staff coming after staff and people able to kind of move from job to job and pick that up. I think where the council area, because tourism has been less well developed, having that kind of strong cohort of staff takes time to build up. So I think you're hitting a particularly difficult time for hospitality business with COVID, with the cost of doing business after that, particular energy costs, and now recruitment. So it is probably harder in locations where there hasn't been a very strong hospitality sector before to kind of keep going. And where we've seen it here locally, people have been going sort of from 5 days a week down to certainly not doing 7 days a week, down to 5 days a week and 3 days a week and so on and so forth. But it's difficult to make ends meet, even if you're kind of keeping the hours down. So it's a hard business at the moment, and you're kind of seeing a rate turnover of new businesses opening and then closing maybe within 18 months, 2 years. That's the kind of the rate of churn at the moment. Not quite sure what the solution is. There's talk of kind of VAT cuts, but even that, if your turnover isn't great and the recruitment isn't great, all the VAT changes in the world won't necessarily get you out of that hole.
Okay, thank you. We've no other hands up, and we want to thank you for your time tonight and also for your report. And I'm sure we'll see you again in the near future. So
Thanks, Chair. Thanks very much. Bye.
Councillor McGrath, I think just on that last point, we do have a paper coming in the early in the new year, just on what we're doing currently in our local hospitality industry. So we'll see that through committee fairly soon. Members, we're now moving on to agenda item 4 and 4.1 is a decision item. So Nicola should take us through this ABC Labour Market Partnership, the forward plan 526 and through to 27. Thank you, Nicola.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. And good evening, members. 4.1 is indeed an item for decision, and it's the ABC Labour Market Partnership Forward Plan. The decision required, it's recommended that members approve the ABC Labour Market Partnership Action Plan 25-26 and 26-27 and grant permission to the Chief Executive to accept the letter of offer when received from the Department for Communities and to approve the updated ABC Labour Market Partnership Strategic Assessment for 24-27.
Thank you, Nicola. And Councillor O'Hanlon, your hands up. Was it on this issue?
Yeah, Chair, just to declare an interest as chairman of the Appleby Trust in Armagh, and they're mentioned in the report as one of the receivers of grant aid.
Thank you, Councillor O'Hanlon. Okay, members, have we any questions on that, or have we a proposer and a seconder? Okay, members, is anybody out there?
Happy to propose, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lavery. And we have a seconder there. Okay, Councillor McGrath. Thank you. Proposed and seconded. Members, we all agree. Just give us a nod. Agreed. Thank you. Members, agenda item 4.2 is an information item from the business support update that we're happy to note. In the absence of any hands up, we're happy to note. Thank you. Members, agenda item 4.3, approach to establishing the ABC Global Economic Partnership. This is a new thing, so I'm going to ask Nicola if she give us a brief update on this. Thank you, Nicola.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is looking at an approach to establishing the ABC Local Economic Partnership. So it comes on the back of some work that the Minister for the Economy has been doing, and he's announced his commitment to developing a regionally balanced economy where everyone shares in the benefits of prosperity. And this is a different way of looking at the economy, and it really will provide this council with an opportunity to work with stakeholders to identify barriers to economic development and to develop priority interventions and to build the region's value proposition for the future as well. There is some funding coming to the local economic partnerships, and we think it's in the region of £45 million over the next 3 years. And Invest NI will also put a new focus on regional balance, so we'll get more support locally here, outside of the LEP, but also within the LEP as well. And so we have been working behind the scenes as well, trying to bring together all the stakeholders to look at the strategic documents that are out there at the moment and try to think, I suppose, very strategically about the best options for establishing the composition and the governance of an ABC Local Economic Partnership. What is going to work best for this area? How can we harness the strengths of the area, include all the area, and to make sure that we get buy-in from all the stakeholders that we want to have? So we've been mandated by DFE to include a number of partners. They said the further education sector, local enterprise agencies and chambers of commerce must be included as well. And they've also said that membership can also include universities, etc. There you'll see the list. But really, this is the opportunity for us in this area to create the driver for economic development, for strategic development for the future. So we've been looking at this with our colleagues in Invest NI and at DFE, with DFE as well, to explore what options we might have. And we've put some down on paper for you to consider. And it's important to note that the list is not exhaustive. but it is just some of the ideas that we have put forward that we want just members to consider and to think about and maybe to come back with ideas upon. The first one is to integrate the local economic partnership with the community planning economy thematic working group, which has already been established, has got governance, has got members, and has members from all of the DFE requested membership organisations already. We could integrate it with the labour market partnership, which is all about skills and employability across the borough, and also has those representatives plus representatives from industry and all sorts of training organisations and bodies as well. Or we could integrate it with the Business Partnership Alliance potentially, as they have the potential to include a lot more industry reps, and they also have further education, local enterprise agency and business chamber representatives too. Or we could go alone, create a standalone local economic partnership, something new, something that maybe embraces the best of everything. So we've put down those 4 options for members to have a look at. We've put down the composition, the governance, and we would encourage you to have a look at those. The timeline it did start off being very tight in that the Department for the Economy wanted to have partnerships established by December 24, but we have since clarified that the timescale is a little bit looser than that. And we've agreed with them, look, it is better that we get this right rather than rush it and get something wrong that does not work for this area, because we believe this is a very unique area. We have so many strengths, so many opportunities, great urban areas, great industrial areas, great rural areas, and it's finding the right partnership that really works and makes a difference here. So that's really all I wanted to say on that, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Nicola, for the update on that. Members, this is an item for noting, but we have Councillor Flaherty, your hands up. You want to unmute and come on ahead?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and I'll try to be brief because I know you've lots on. Nicola, thank you very much for that presentation. You've actually already somewhat answered just towards the last there one of my queries, which was the timeline, because I thought this is very, very tight for your team, given particularly the busy season that you're in. And I have to say, like, you have to welcome this different way of looking at things. We welcome these things quite frequently, and it's great to see, okay, there's money coming at some level. We don't know really what's coming to this area as such, I'm assuming, Nicola. And it's great to see, a support given to the town centre first approach, which we've talked about for so long. I suppose I just wondered, and it is laid out in the paper, so apologies if I'm repeating myself, but that's my fear with this, that it's going to be repeating itself, because you're sort of saying that it would integrate well with all the existing bodies. I said on some of those, and I do have a weak sort of maybe slight concern about replication. I know you have noted that in your report, Nicola, but like, for example, with the community planning, like, there's lots and lots of these groups and there's lots and lots of these things. The same with the others. I asked a number of questions about the VPN. I've got speaking to some officers. I did ask that last month. I sort of was under the impression that's what this was to do. So that's what they were to do. So is this to support them or the other way around? Because at the minute, I have to say to you, Nicola, I've just come just before this meeting. I came actually from the Portadown Chamber of Commerce meeting, and they've really got themselves really, really enthused, particularly in the last 6 months. But they want to see things done in Portadown now. They really need to see improvement really quickly. So I don't know every time to say it, but I'm going to be parochial about this one at this point. With a really, really energised meeting there before. So if there's work like this coming, I'm telling you now, be ready, because there will be a list coming from Portadown because we've waited for far too long.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Flaherty. And yeah, it's quite an overarching piece of work that have to go on, and I think it is best that there's buy-in from as much experience that we have across our area. And I think it is a sensible report that has been brought here to go forward. So I know we will support it. So members, if there's no one else with their hands up, we will now agenda item. Sorry, Alderman Barry. Go ahead. Nice one. That's grand. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Nicola. A very, very detailed report. And I know Nicola and her team are experts in this and work very, very closely with our town centres and the local economic groups that are there. And you'll not be surprised, Nicola, by me saying that whilst there's so much in this report and it's very, very welcome, and there's so much for us to go away and think about, there's the aspect of the rural towns. You know, I know we have the big towns and with the Chamber of Commerce, there is a bit of a problem issue there with some of the smaller towns that maybe do not have that sort of structure, that facility, and we don't want them to be left behind. So I'll have a further conversation with you about that in relation to see how we could maybe help or take that forward. But there's smaller towns there who will want to be in on this as well, because the smaller towns have the lesser footfall, but yet of all, we want to see them surviving. So thank you very much to you and your team, and I know you will work and have been working very hard on this, and I know you will listen to all of us to see what's the best delivery option for this. But thank you, and I look forward to working with you on it. Thank you. Thank you, Alderman Barry. And yeah, I think it's good that it's come like this, if there's time for everyone to have a read through it, as opposed to come like a decision and then any feedback can be added in through. So but I think it's a good report there. So thank you. Members, agenda item 4.4 and is an item for noting that we all agree to note.
Sure.
Councillor Duffy, your hands up first, and then we'll bring in Councillor McLeod. Councillor Duffy, yeah.
Looks like he's just trying to find the mute there, or unmute.
Councillor Duffy, we can unmute you here. If you just leave it alone a second, we can bring you in.
Yeah. Yes, Chair. Thank you. Thanks for the report, Nicola. No, just very worrying figures here by Invest NI for only 4% in the last decade. Is Invest NI not advertising our land, or what are they doing? Is the land not ready for use? Is not sewage connection, building control? What is going on with this land? Especially there in Craigavon, like 97.9% of land and still 95% available. No, these very, very worrying. Like, no, you would near think they're not showing the land to anybody for investment.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy, and we'll ask Nicola to come in. That I remember speaking to them before, and they do seem to have very specific reasons that you can actually access them. I know that's been an issue for some business in the past, but Nicola, maybe know more on that. Sorry.
No, absolutely, Chair, you're absolutely right. There are very specific criteria that Invest NI use whenever they are working with their land. Now, a lot of that land in Mandeville and Craigavon is not serviced for business use. It is, green grass. So there's a lot of work and a lot of investment that Invest NI would have to do to bring the services in. And I know that funding has been a difficulty for them in the past, but they are very, very focused on the criteria that they have. We would get a lot of queries from transport companies, logistics companies who need large swathes of land for their plant. And they are definitely out as far as Invest NI are concerned. And there's quite a lot of businesses that don't necessarily fall within their remit. So it is very frustrating, and I'm sure it's very frustrating for them as well. But it is trying to work with them. One of the recent companies that did get some land off them was in relation to white soaps. I believe that they, through the Vein Valley Group, got some factory there, but it was a long process.
Thank you, Nicola. Okay, Councillor Duffy. Councillor Duffy, and again, sorry, we're just trying to get you in 1 second.
Thank you, Chair. I would sort of like, if they can't use it, it's been a decade, probably more. They can't use it, sell it on to somebody that can.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor McLeod, you were next. If you unmute there.
Okay, Chair. Can you hear me? Yeah. Yeah, I suppose it's it's maybe coming in with a similar type question or query to what Councillor Duffy did, and certainly many thanks to yourself, Nicola, for I suppose answering the most of my questions, especially around that Mandeville land. Now, I suppose maybe another comment I would have on that. If I'm right in saying that Mandeville land was land that was vested way back by the old Craigavon operation way back 40, 50, 60 years ago. So I suppose that only increases the bad look that there is on this, because that land has been around and available for what literally amounts to multiple decades, and yet nothing seems to have been done about it. So I think very useful report, a very stark report, and certainly something that, you know, as far as I would be concerned, leaves huge questions for Invest NI. But there's no real question in there, Chair, but it's a huge issue for Invest NI. Thank you.
Yeah, agree, Councillor McConnell. It is an issue. I think remember some of the reports coming over the last number of years and have had the same issue. Councillor Moodry or Alderman Moodry, you were next there. If you want to unmute.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to back up what Councillor Duffy said there. I mean, growth in our borough is stymied. It's not encouraged. And that has been the case for this past 2 decades in relation to Invest NI. The land bank that they have currently around Craigavon is very much the same as what they had 20 years ago. And it doesn't seem to make a bit of difference as to what minister's in charge from what party. Invest NI do their own thing. They're too prescriptive. And that's what makes us different from the United States, from the Republic of Ireland. There's a will to get on and do things and to overcome hurdles. But as an organisation, we don't even have a link within our organisation between planning and economic development to drive business on. And that's where we are. And that's why we are where we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Moodry and Councillor O'Hanlon.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Nicola, for the report. It was actually myself that raised this and asked for the data to come back. And whilst I feel the pain of some other members, I think you can, if you take a look at the figures, there's more Invest NI land available on the Charlestown Road in Craigavon than there is in the city of Armagh. And this has been a historic lack of an interest by Invest NI in the city. The data, the report shows that the data was collected in 2021. So I would suggest that maybe, and knowing some of the land available there on the out of Edna Vez in Armagh, that it's probably actually less than 7.4 acres as of today. So I would want to see Invest NI come forward with a proposal to secure additional lands to be able to attract investment. And what if it's not available? If there's not interest in Craigavon or others Lurgan for other reasons, probably maybe down to staff availability or something like that as well is possibly an issue. But that there is definitely a need and demand for it in Armagh. So can I ask that we, first of all, have we any idea when Invest are due before council again? If not, can I ask that they come before council or the committee, whatever council or committee see fit? And secondly, can we ask them and or the minister to come forward with a proposal about how Invest and the department intend to manage this land going forward? Councillor Duffy and Alderman Moodry there referred to issues around selling off land. Well, if that's the case, so be it. And as they said, let others come in and who are interested in developing it. But if Invest NI can't do it, so I think we need to have a serious conversation with them. So I'd like Invest NI brought before committee, and secondly, then write to the department or write to the minister and ask for a detailed plan as to how they intend to manage these lands going forward, either those in Craigavon or Lurgan, or how they plan to acquire more lands around the city of Armagh.
Thank you, Councillor. And yeah, we're just talking here with the director that I think we should be writing to them on these issues, and potentially then we'll see about trying to get them in. As we all agree that we write to them, just and ask them to come into the committee and also write to the department. Yeah.
Chair, if I could come back on that just.
Yes, go ahead.
For a second. Okay. If Councillor O'Hanlon's making the proposal, or if we're not at the stage of making it yet, let's ask the Chief Executive and the Chair of Invest NI. Not somebody out of an office. Let's take it to the top level.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And I'm happy to second that proposal.
Yeah, I think that was what we were going to suggest there, that we actually write to them, the Chief Executive of it, and invite them here before the committee, but also that our director will make contact with them and Nicola around the issues that we have discussed specifically before that. But Councillor Albright.
Thank you, Chair. And I just want to come in off the back, I think, a point Nicola had made, maybe respond to Councillor Duffy. Did Nicola mention that there had been interest in some of these lands around Mandeville and so on? She mentioned logistic companies and things like that. But Invest NI had turned those applications down, or those expressions of interest down. Is that sort of, did I pick that up right?
Yeah, I think it was a broader point that there was logistic. I'll let Nicola, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're okay. No, you're absolutely right. The broader point is that logistical companies are not allowed to use the land. It has to be for manufacturing and tradable services, and within specific sectors as well. And there are other rules around it as well. But we know from being contacted by certain companies that they haven't been able to acquire any of the Invest NI land and would have liked to have done so.
Yeah, could I just come back on that, Chair? Because I mean, Invest NI are meant to be facilitating economic growth, and you've land there that's been sitting for 40 or 50 years. That's an absolute scandal that Invest NI is turning down economic growth for our residents and our ratepayers. They've got their heads stuck in Belfast and elsewhere. They need to be supporting that. So I would welcome if we could come in and give them a proper grilling, and I think it will be a proper grilling, because there's people that could be employed in those industries locally, or that are maybe having to commute elsewhere. And as touched on by Owen, we've got strong economic growth already, but it seems to be Invest NI are acting as a blockage to that. It's to be fair, Chair, I think it's outrageous, that approach for Invest NI. They either need to change their red lines as such, to allow that economic growth to take place, especially if there is interest, as sort of Nicola's mentioned there, or they need to basically move away from that land and let the private sector or whoever facilitate that local industry, because it's just unacceptable that they are turning people away, hurting our local economy, and not being held to account for it. So I think it's going to be a very difficult meeting for the Chief Executive, whoever Invest NI, because that approach is just not acceptable, and Chair will certainly not be accepting that going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just bring in Paul here to manage the director.
Maybe so.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Sorry for some more hands up there. I suppose just to acknowledge that Invest NI are going through a bit of a reset at the moment. If people don't know that, we're through the new sub-regional strategy, new chief executive appointed, looking at new structures, etc. Some of those consultations on that sub-regional strategy, I suppose I attended, and they did acknowledge that maybe performance around the likes of this and land hasn't been what it needed to be over the last number of years. Not that I'm defending Invest NI, and I do welcome the proposal around inviting them in to come and deliver directly to us, and certainly at a high level, and us as officers will go ahead and deliver that. But yeah, the new sub-regional strategy is also about, I suppose, re-looking at this and seeing how they can maybe move to encouraging investment rather than prohibiting it going forward. But I appreciate all members acknowledgement that, and certainly Alderman Mutri, your, I suppose, statement around it doesn't seem to matter which minister's been at the table here. We haven't seen progress in some of these, and certainly us as officers want to help facilitate that. And no, I just wanted to mention that about the reset that's going on at the moment in SDNI, and I do think them coming and presenting to members is a great proposal, and we'll certainly write out to them and facilitate that.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks for pointing that out. Councillor Faggery.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just wanted to come in there quickly after because you somewhat triggered me there, some of my fellow councillors, and I just to agree with them, particularly Councillor Lavery. And if I can just say, coming from, I find this very interesting. Some of you maybe know my background with regard to Craigavon, but if not, I'll tell you. It's very difficult to see those figures when you come from a family originally from Craigavon, the Honeyfords, who were farmers and whose ground was vested for this very purpose. And families were uprooted and moved without half a thought and probably looking back relatively little. So I agree, Councillor Lavery, this is a scandal. It absolutely is a scandal. So the sooner we get them in, resets or nothing, you know, they've been resetting and rejigging themselves for quite some time by the look of these figures. So get them in, because we do know that there's businesses being turned away. We do know that. We hear it all the time. And it's quite frustrating. And we're also talking about setting up different groups for growing business, and then whenever we get to the stage we're looking places for them, there's nowhere. It's ridiculous. So get them in, and let's have a good chat with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Faggery. And I suppose on the side of caution, we do still have places available, and we want businesses to be in our borough, but we understand the sentiments, and I agree with everyone that spoke tonight, you know, that we want this land available. We don't want messages that we haven't. Alderman Barry's in the next.
So thank you, Chair, and I would agree with everybody that has spoke to think that InvestNI is still holding 541 acres across Northern Ireland, which is undeveloped. But of course, the ABC has the highest proportion of undeveloped land. From that 135 acres, there's something seriously wrong. And I think when we do bring whoever comes from InvestNI, I think they need to have their homework done. So I think it would need to be abundantly clear what questions we're asking of them and what answers we would like. So I would like to know, you know, over the past 5 years, what have they done to advertise this land that has been undeveloped, and what type of companies, what type of businesses far and near that have approached an InvestNI, and how have they actually engaged with them, and what was the reason for not investing or working with them. Planning reasons as well we would need to know, because we as a council are probably part responsible if it comes to that. So I think when we're bringing these guys to whatever meeting it may be, hopefully sooner rather than later, we would like to let them know exactly what was discussed tonight. Let them know, clearly our deep concerns in relation to this undeveloped land in our area on our doorstep, and what have they been doing to try to get this land developed, by whom. Like, I know White's Oats, as you quite rightly mentioned, Nicola, have the land out, a bit of land out at the edge of Craigavon, but I understand from White's Oats that could be at least 3 to 5 years down the road before even the sod is cut. It's just because of the financial restraints and prices and things. But we would like to know exactly what they've been doing with their land and how they've been advertising that across the UK and further afield for investors, so that we can see growth and see investment in our area. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor O'Hanlon?
Yeah, Chair, thank you. Look, I appreciate the director's comments about the restructure of InvestNI, but to be honest, it's not a change in structure that InvestNI needs, it's a change of mindset. Anything beyond the outer ring of Belfast, they're not interested in it. And their foreign direct investment figures show that, in terms of the number of visits that they bring to the different regions. To be honest, there's a view out there that they're fast becoming not fit for purpose. And unless they send their chief executive and top team down here, we need to be strong enough to send them away and say, sorry, folks, we're not interested in talking to you until you send us your top team. And ultimately, the power is also in council's hands, because it is council who zone lands, and we're going through a development process, area plan process at the minute. So there's a lot of that land that is sitting on Invest NI's books that is valuable. But if it's no longer valued or zoned as development lands, it's no longer valuable to them. So they really need to buck their ideas up and get working with council.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Members, I think we're all well agreed on the issues here, and we'll be sending a strongly worded letter to them conveying the feeling of this committee and invite them to the committee. And we would be requesting that the top team are here, and I'm sure we can leave that with the director and we can sign it and send it. Members, thank you for your conversation. That 4.4 will read the note. Number 4.5 is a report from the Business Partnership Alliance. Members, this was requested, and we have the Business Partnership Alliance coming into us next month. So if members want to be able to read over this report, and we're happy to note it, and then you'll have it ahead of next month's committee. We all agree with that, members? Agreed. Thank you. Okay, members, we're moving on to agenda item 5, and 5.1 is a letter of offer from the Northern Ireland Museums Council. I will declare an interest, as I currently am a member of it as chair of this committee. So I just wanted to declare that for the state, and then I'll ask Brian if he would take us through 5.1. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. This report relates to a letter of offer from Northern Ireland Museums Council. So the request before members this evening is just to accept the letter of offer. It's for a playful museums event for small children, and staged in the Armagh Museum. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, members. You've heard the report there, and we have someone to propose and second. Councillor O'Hanlon's proposed and Alderman Barry has seconded. Are we all agreed? All agreed, thank you. Okay, members, agenda item 5.2 then, a letter of offer from HED fund, and we'll bring Brian in again, please.
Thank you, Chair. Members will be aware that one of the key projects in the Mid-South West growth deal is the Armagh Jail project, and there's a number of pieces of work that needs to happen in advance of progression with the outline business case. So Shane's team have applied and been successful in securing funding towards some of the studies that we know will be required. So the recommendation before members is that members approve the acceptance of the letter of offer awarded to council from HED's Historic Environment Fund for £10,000 towards an archaeological impact assessment for Armagh Jail with associated archaeological mitigation strategy and programme of works and a conservation management plan. And so the funding secured with your permission is £10,000, and will be £5,000 made available from the existing departmental budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, members, have we have any questions or proposer and seconder? Councillor Hall, happy to propose? Thank you. And do we have a seconder? Alderman Midry. Okay, thank you, members. You all agreed? Thank you. Members, 5.3 is information item, but Shane is on the call here. I will ask Shane just to give us a brief update on this Heritage Places update. Shane, if you can unmute, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully you can hear me. Good evening, members. Yes, I suppose we just wanted to update members on progress under the Heritage Places initiative. As per the report, we were delighted to find out earlier this year that we were chosen to be part of this very exciting strategic initiative by National Lottery Heritage Fund, which will invest somewhere in the region of £200 million in a number of heritage places across the UK over the next 10 years. And our borough was chosen to be one of the first and the only to date Northern Ireland location that has been part of that. We became sort of acutely aware through the early stages of engagement with National Lottery Heritage Fund that we had no sort of overarching heritage strategy, and they have now agreed to support us in the development of that. So we received a letter of offer from them back in April-May time of this year, and that included, I suppose, two key pieces of work, and that was the recruitment of a Heritage Places engagement officer. That person has since been appointed and took up post at the start of last month. So she's been out and about and engaging with a variety of groups and organisations, school groups, community organisations and cultural organisations. We've also commissioned the development of the heritage strategy, and work has been ongoing, and we've been meeting with a variety of people across the last number of months. I know there's details on drop-in sessions. Unfortunately, they're all now finished. A few of them were sort of affected by both Storm Connell and Storm Dara. Some of them were in external locations, and we were up against the elements in some of those. But we intend over, I suppose, coming months to do further engagement sessions in all of the DEAs, and we would be really appreciative if members could support that and distribute the details of them to their constituents as we go ahead. We're working towards a timetable of having the heritage strategy developed by October of 2025. But we want to get around and talk to people as much as possible over the next sort of 9-10 months. So just wanted to take the opportunity to update members and thank them for their support on this so far, and happy to take any queries.
Thank you, Shane. Thank you for the work that's going on this year. We do hope that we will be sharing and promoting this for you between now and next October. Remember, there's no hands up. We're all happy to note. Agreed to note. Thank you. Members, agenda item 6 is correspondence, and I haven't received any as of yet tonight. So, Chair, could I just seek a proposer and a seconder to go into committee? I was only going to say Chair, I didn't read it out, for consideration of the confidential items of business. Do you have a proposer? Alderman Baxter proposed, and do we have a seconder?
Second, Chair.
Councillor Maggle, thank you. Okay, members and online viewers, in accordance with Schedule 6 of the Local Government Act, exempt information will now be moving into a confidential session of the council. This means that we will be turning off the public feed of the meeting. This will be returned when the meeting is restarted. Can I now ask the ICT officer to please turn off the feed and confirm to me when we are in a confidential session of this meeting? Feed again and confirm for me when it is on, so the meeting can proceed in session. Okay, can I now seek a proposer and a seconder to agree the recommendations that we just made in committee? Alderman Moodry, happy to propose, and
Second.
happy to second. Alderman Baxter, thank you, members. Members, we're near the end of our meeting tonight. We're just moving on to AOB. There's no particular items of AOB, but could I just at this stage just put a shout out again to our quiet Christmas. I've been on in Blairey, a great report so far of this event. And we checked before the meeting, there is a few spaces left between now and the weekend. You do need to book online, but certainly if you let them know, I think it's the weekend's fairly well booked, Saturday and Sunday, but this week is there's a few spaces, and we know we want to use every single space that this event is always kept as we move forward. And can also tonight, members, just on your behalf, thank all our staff who have put on some fantastic events over the Christmas period. A lot of work went in, a lot of challenging weather conditions, and I know some went above and beyond to really make sure these events happen. So we want to put on record our thanks. It was a change this year, and the red bus went down really well from any events I was at, and the feedback I got right across from different town centres and chambers of commerce. So we do thank the staff who have worked in some windy and some difficult weather, but we do really thank them for that. And members, and just as we finish, if I could just take opportunity as chair to thank you all for your input to the committee so far this year, and as we come near the end of the year, to wish each one a very, very happy Christmas. I hope we all get a bit of time off and enjoy time with our family, and just to thank you all, and we look forward to, we'll see you at full council, but coming back in the new year. Thank you, members. Good evening.
Thank you, Chair. Happy Christmas.